Hello everyone, we're going to get started in just 1 minute. Hello and welcome. We're going to get started in 1 minute. Hello and welcome everyone. Your phone line is muted. This webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and slides will be shared later. Welcome again. My name is Leslie Gabay-Swanston, Director of Program and Systems Quality at the National Summer Learning Association. Welcome to our webinar on the arts at the heart of summer learning and student engagement. Before we get started, here's a quick overview of our webinar today. First, I'll share a little bit about NSLA for those who are unfamiliar before we hear from our expert panel. After that, we'll wrap up with some announcements, some questions, and then announcements about upcoming events and webinars. As we're going through our webinar, if you have any questions for our panel, please add them to the Q&A box. The National Summer Learning Association is the only national nonprofit exclusively focused on addressing the achievement and opportunity gaps by increasing access to summer learning opportunities. NSLA's goal is to increase nationwide the number of high-quality summer learning programs. To achieve this goal, NSLA recognizes and disseminates what works, offers expertise and support for programs and communities, and advocates for summer learning as a solution for equity and excellence in education. NSLA's work is driven by the belief that all children and youth deserve high-quality summer learning experiences that will help them succeed in college, career, and life. Core to the work is a recognition that high-quality summer learning programs work. High-quality summer learning programs have been shown to improve reading and math skills, school attachment, motivation, and relationships with adults and peers. We know that summer is a time of great inequity for young people, and we believe that promoting and supporting summer opportunities is a way to address this. This goes beyond the summer learning that's in our name. We also want to see programs and communities addressing access to other resources like meals and youth employment. Summer is a time for innovation and exploration. Without some of the constraints of the school year, kids are able to try different ways of learning and interact with other adults and peers that they might not otherwise. It is also a time of innovation for adults, whether there's opportunities for professional development, trying out new teaching methods, or exploring new partnerships. Today, we'll be exploring the arts and summer programs. I'm helping to welcome our first presenters from Young Audiences of Maryland to discuss arts in the visual space. Stacey Sanders Evans, President and CEO of Young Audiences of Maryland, and Curtis Donnelly, Chief Operating Officer. Stacey and Curtis.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be a part of this. You know, we've been working fast and furious to figure out how to move our programs to a virtual space. And so I'm sure all of us are in the same boat. So it's nice to be in the boat together with you all. We have basically like 7-8 weeks. So a little bit about Young Audiences. We're a statewide nonprofit in Maryland whose mission is to transform student lives and education through the arts. And we really do this by finding and partnering and supporting with local artists in our community. And we bring them into the classroom. And these are artists who represent lots of different disciplines. we have two different strategies. We have a strategy that's about bringing artists into classrooms to support learning in the arts and about the arts. And we also have a strategy called arts integration, where artists really use their art form as a vehicle to engage kids in other academic areas. So if we could switch to the next slide. So young audiences, in the next slide after that. So young audiences really for 70 years was primarily focused on bringing the arts into the school day, school year. And about 7 years ago, we really started to focus on the opportunity around summer. We now have three pretty large summer learning programs that we implement in Baltimore City. One is around college and career readiness. That's the Bloomberg Arts Internship Program. There's another summer program that's really about instilling a love of reading that's operated out of school libraries. It's also about leveraging the cultural or the assets in our cultural community. And then the last one is our largest program, the Summer Arts and Learning Academy, that Curtis is going to be talking with you about today. I brought up the first two, though, just in the event that there are other people on this call that are really trying to figure out how do you move college and career prep or internships virtually, or how do you bring library programs to a virtual space? Because if you're interested in talking after this, we would love to talk with you. So if we could go to the next slide, all of us are in the same boat about how do you transition to virtual. And because our organization does so much during the school year and school day, a month and a half ago, we started to ask this question of, with school closures, where all of our programs take place, how could we actually continue to advance our mission? And we decided that, we can't do everything, but if we could focus on a couple of things, what would we focus on? And we love all kids, but we really, really wanted to love on kids who were most impacted by the digital divide. And there are many kids in Baltimore and nationwide who were left behind as school districts started to move to online learning. And so we wanted to, develop content that could be accessed without a device or the internet. We decided, hey, why don't we produce a TV show? We know that most school districts have a public access channel, and so we wanted to be able to broadcast content in that way. We also took a look at the worksheets and the online content that was going out to students, and we found that it wasn't as captivating as it could be. And I think all of us here on this webinar know that the arts can be a vehicle for captivating kids, not just in the art form, but in English language arts and math. And so we developed something, and I think Curtis is putting a link to it in the chat here, called Arts and Learning Kids. It is a TV show, and it has had great success here in Baltimore, and it's helped us build our muscle in trying to figure out how do you record content, how do you distribute it, and it's helping us sort of pilot practices for the summer. The other thing is we realized that there's not a lot of supplies at home that kids can necessarily utilize to engage in arts and creativity. So we started to look at the meal sites in Baltimore City. There's 18 of them, and we created arts and creativity kits that we are distributing at meal sites. We've distributed 18,000 to date, and there is going to be a link in the chat where you can go and take a look at what do these supply kits look like. They are meant to be, they can be used without the internet, so there's IKEA-like visual instructions there, but there's also, we use a platform called Jump Rope, where artists could develop real simple videos that kids could follow, so they can, because they can do the kits with the artist. So these are two things that we have sort of piloted during the school year that we think are going to help contribute to moving our summer program virtually. And with that, I'd love to pass it on to Curtis, who can talk about what our plans are.
Thanks. So as Stacy mentioned, my name is Curtis Donnelly. I'm the Chief of Arts and Learning Academies at Young Audiences of Maryland. And you can go to the next slide. I have the pleasure normally, as we all have our normal time job, and now we have our COVID job. So normally I have the pleasure of leading a team here at Young Audiences of 4 folks that we just get to work on planning for summer learning all year long, because we run essentially for Baltimore City Schools, we essentially run their elementary grades Title I program. And so we have about 2,600 students across 9 or 10 locations every summer, and we employ about 400 total people. About 110 of those are artists, and another 50 of them are what we call teaching artist apprentices. So we do employ a number of folks in our community, which is part of, you know, kind of our impetus for how do we really transition that important work into kind of the virtual space. So next slide, please. Kind of go talk a little bit about how we normally use artists in the summer, so that we can kind of contrast that with where we think they can be most impactful in the current climate. So generally, like I said, we have about 110 teaching artists that are typically paired with a classroom teacher and deliver arts integrated co-taught instruction in both math and literacy in our program. So they generally are doing 90 minutes of co-taught math and 90 minutes of co-taught literacy every day, because our program is primarily funded through a school district through Title I funds. That academic component is super critical, but we kind of take a different approach. As you can probably imagine, it gets tricky as we try to think about how do we replicate that in a digital environment. In addition to teaching alongside a teacher for the majority of a large portion of the day, teaching artists for us are also doing kind of the enrichment type of instruction as well, where they're teaching their art form for the sake of teaching their art form. We kind of do that a little bit differently depending on the age group of students, but for us, for the younger students, rising K through rising second graders, they essentially each week would get a different art form where they do a 1 week, what we call arts exploration, whereas the older students kind of get to choose from a menu of art forms that are available and kind of do a deeper dive into that art form for longer than just a week. Next slide, please. So moving into, sorry, there we go. It's hard when you gotta wait for the reaction. So kind of with that kind of basis in mind, a foundation, we spent, because we kind of have a team that's able to spend all of our time looking at best practices and thinking about trying to learn from folks that are doing this stuff on the ground. Here's a few kind of guiding kind of principles and thoughts that we've heard from a number of different sources. For us, you know, one of the most important things for us in working with a really big program with a school district that has a lot of really, you know, important goals, but very rigid goals in a lot of ways, having that conversation about really what is important this summer for our kids to get. And in our case, we think that is really utilizing artists to build relationships, to connect with families, and to bring some of that kind of social emotional type of learning to the forefront. And that might mean when it comes to the amount of content that you can deliver, maybe we're delivering less hours of academic content than we would normally in a normal program. So that was an important conversation to have. Obviously, Stacy alluded to it, but when we're talking about synchronous versus asynchronous content, and for those who aren't familiar with the lingo yet, asynchronous just meaning that everybody is not necessarily watching it at the same time. It might be a video that they're watching, you know, at some point, and synchronous would be when all students are coming together at the same time, maybe in a Zoom platform or something like that. But especially when you're talking about that asynchronous content, it's got to be engaged. We're assuming that most of our kids, their families are going to be going back to work, and they're going to be asked to do a virtual summer program. And so that is where we have to rely on our artists. We know that they've they're the captivating ones always, and so we really rely on them to steer us there, and make that content something that's actually something that a kid just wants to watch because it's fun and engaging, and not necessarily because it's a lesson. Obviously, making lots of time for choice can be tricky, but there's really meaningful ways you can do it during a virtual setting. Having some sort of kind of creative challenge or through line is something that has really been important for us. And it's also a really important way we're including artists. So we are still kind of in the development phase, but we essentially are creating a series of challenges that involve students in small groups working together to ultimately come up over the course of a 5-week program with a final product that has to meet a whole bunch of different kind of criteria. Think for those of you who might be familiar with like Odyssey of the Mind or Destination Imagination, take that, put a bunch of artists on it, and make it virtual, and that's kind of what we're looking at. But trying to develop that inherent, that inherent engagement of wanting to be a part of something bigger, a part of a project where you're working towards an end goal, is really important, and I think artists can really bring a lot to that. Let's go on to the, sorry, it sounds like I'm cutting out a little bit. I'm not sure what to do. I'll try to, let me know if you're completely losing me. Let's move on. Yeah, let me turn off my video. Let's see if that helps. Let's move on to this next slide. Somebody can give me feedback as to whether I'm coming in loud and clear. So kind of taking those general kind of ideas around where artists kind of really bring great value. This is kind of, for us at least, our kind of translation of how that looks in an actual virtual summer program. So essentially keeping that schedule very consistent and easy to understand for students is important. So over here on the left side is essentially a little flowchart of our daily schedule. But we're talking, you can kind of see the breakdown of what we're thinking about synchronous versus asynchronous. So morning meeting is kind of our synchronous piece. It's all around social emotional learning. We're essentially grouping kids into groups of 10 with one either teacher or artist as their crew leader. But essentially a lot of what they're doing throughout the rest of the summer is with that same small group of 10 to 1. The arts learning kids is the essentially the asynchronous viewing of the lesson that we will be broadcasting on the TV station, and will also be available online and on YouTube and all of those various platforms. Then back into synchronous for when we are essentially going to do academic content follow-up, as well as allowing artists to follow up kind of experiences to the academic lesson that kids have just watched on TV or on YouTube. Then as we move into the afternoon, most of our students are going to go to a local school site for meals. So we have to really build in a big break, bigger than what we usually, would normally do. And then kind of coming back into the afternoon, there's primarily asynchronous content. But the older students that are doing the creative challenge kind of piece that I mentioned do come back. That's the 3rd through 5th graders do have kind of a final 30 minutes of a synchronous piece with their crew. And then offering office hours is another kind of thing we're looking into as a best practice, but not just looking at teachers doing office hours, but how do we think about how artists can be engaged in something like that, where students who are wanting additional contact or wanting additional support have that ability. So the other things we can talk about if people are interested in, but those are essentially some other elements that don't necessarily occur weekly. So I think I'm having trouble with my audio, so I wonder if it makes sense for me maybe to pass it back to Stacy.
Well, Well, it might make sense now. I think we've done a good review of our programs, and we're happy to answer questions on the chat and in the Q&A. So maybe we should pass it on to our next organization.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Stacy and Curtis. Just a reminder, if you have questions that you want asked live, please put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. We'll try to catch them and answer some things in the chat box as well, but if you want them asked live during our Q&A section, please add them to the Q&A box. So next we're going to hear from Tiffany Jackson, Director of Education at the Bishop Arts Theater Center, about ways they are working with and preparing families and volunteer artists for this summer. Tiffany?
Hello, everyone. Yes, this year, Bishop Arts Theater Center, we celebrate 26 years. Our mission is to cultivate a arts community, a diverse arts community, while creating opportunities for local and emerging artists through performances and education. We produce a full season of jazz concerts, theater performances, and a speaker series. In addition to that, we also offer our arts education programs year-round. And with our arts education programs, we serve children as well as older adult learners. So we're excited to pivot to more of the digital platform for our summer camp this year. However, we needed to speak with our parents and kind of get their feedback to find out if this is first something that they would like to pursue. So what are the parents saying? So I conducted a parent check-in via Zoom, and I wanted to hear a little bit about their feedback. If we were to continue with our offerings for summer, would they like a virtual summer camp? And so this is some of the feedback that we received from them. So parents agreed that virtual summer camps are the best option for extended learning due to concern for assembling. We know that a lot of the different cities, they still have more of the shelter in place ordinance. They haven't been fully lifted. And so as we continue through those different phases, there are still parents that are in fear of letting their kids gather together with other students. So they feel that this would be the best way to continue summer programming. So they're excited to explore virtual learning opportunities because it allows them to monitor the classes and even participate. So when we are going virtually using Zoom or using Google Hangouts or Google Meet, or any of those other platforms for streaming live, it allows the parents to actually be there with the students and to monitor what's going on in the classes, and then they can even participate at the same time. Parents prefer synchronous learning. As Curtis explained, it's real-time interaction versus a lot of them, the feedback was like they prefer the real-time interaction versus the asynchronous, which is pre-recorded workshops that we have on our YouTube channel. So they want to engage the students right there with the artists. Parents are also looking for a variety. So virtual learning allows you to have more of a variety or offer more of a variety of programming and to expand your workshop offerings. Next slide. Now I want to go into best practices. So we have the parents, they're excited about virtual learning. However, it's important that you have those conversations with your artists about what are the best practices for delivering this curriculum online. So first off, they must find a place in their home where they will not be interrupted during your live or pre-recorded sessions, and to make sure that they set up a workspace for success. Make sure that they have a good web camera or a camera on their device, and that they have a good microphone. And if you don't have a good microphone, it's best to invest in a USB microphone. All artists should make sure they understand how to work their devices in their online content prior to instruction. It's just not a good look if I'm trying to work on my device and I'm having trouble and I'm not knowing what to do. So it's better to prepare ahead of time. Time management is key. Do not arrive late for your online classes. This is something that we have to talk to our artists about. Do not arrive late, especially when you are conducting live streaming classes. Keep in mind EDI, so equity, diversity, and inclusion. Best practices for creating accessible virtual learning. Create workshops that are bilingual workshops, so that way you can expand your reach. We want to make sure that everyone is included in this arts intensive programming. Next slide. Shoot your video in the highest resolution setting. So like anywhere from 1080 to 720, and even if you're using your cell phones, you can adjust, go to settings and adjust your resolution, because we want to give the best quality. Maintain a standard of excellence. For pre-recorded sessions, please stay in the frame and make sure your device is shot in landscape or horizontal view. So when you're using your cell phones or other devices, make sure it's landscape and not vertical, because when you're uploading the content, it's a little bit harder to upload to like YouTube and other portals. Have a plan in place on how to identify and approve participants' entry for every session. So that's on a case-by-case basis for every organization. Some people are using different programs in terms of registering their children for the program. So make sure that you identify what works best for you. Stay on topic. This is very important. When we are conducting these live workshops or even pre-recorded workshops, please stay on topic and do not assume that your students know all of the terminology being used. So build vocabulary words and expound on those words during your lessons. Have fun and keep the students engaged. One of the great things that you can do for your workshops is gamify your lessons. And what I mean about gamify your lessons is that you kind of make it more of a game, because we know that our children love games. They love games. And so we want to make sure that to make it more engaging, you know, kind of create lessons where games are involved. Have students collaborate with each other and create a safe space where students feel appreciated. Some people think that you cannot engage the students as much virtually. You can. You definitely can. There's a lot of engagement that can happen. There's a lot of interaction that can happen. It's based on the instructor and making sure that you get those students together and you let them know that you appreciate them being a part of your workshop. Stay organized and make sure you exhibit strong communication skills. Do not say 20 times. It is a little bit irritating if you're watching, especially for pre-recorded videos, that you're hearing the instructor saying the entire time of your, the entire time of the workshop. Remember to have a time to reflect after every session, and also give opportunity for your children to check in. So you want to check in with your students and ensure that they are retaining the information that's being taught to them. Next slide. Something that you can add to your workshops is SEL. And I know that Curtis and Stacy kind of talked about this before as well, that right now during this pandemic, many students, they're expressing or experiencing stress, anger, and anxiety. And parents are relying more on the arts organizations to be a neighborhood resource for healing. So this is a great opportunity to add SEL, which is social emotional learning. And social emotional learning is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals. They feel and show empathy for others. They establish and maintain positive relationships, and they make responsible decisions. One of the great resources is CASTLE, and I will make sure that in the chat box that you have that website to go to. And in the SEL classes, they talk about creating classes that develop self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making skills. One of the programs that Bishop Arts Theater Center offers is called Body Freedom. And this is just an example of an SEL program. This workshop explores the psychotherapeutic use of movement to boost self-confidence, team building, and problem solving. The use of movement also helps to promote emotional, social, cognitive, and physical integration within students for the purpose of learning new tools to improve health and well-being. With this holistic approach to learning and healing, students will have a better understanding of who they are and become more comfortable in their own skin. So that's just an example of a program that we have that we offer SEL. Next slide. In conclusion, I would like to say, be as innovative as possible while creating virtual learning summer program. Engage students by allowing them to create personal videos of themselves that they can submit to you. Teach students to be socially conscious by implementing a program like Eco Arts. Eco Arts is an opportunity for children to create art using materials that they have at home, like water bottles, cereal boxes, milk cartons, and they're using these items and creating art all while saving their environment. It's teaching them to recycle, to reuse, to repurpose these items. And it helps because when we're thinking about limited resources that the children have at home, we need to think about what do they have and what can we work with to create art, and to also create learning opportunities where we're teaching them healthy habits. Use movement and music for SEL workshops. And lastly, always remember to have fun.
Great, thank you so much, Tiffany. As a reminder to everyone, this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording and the slides will be shared out later. So finally, we want to hear from Robin Berlinski, Executive Director of Engaging Creative Minds and one of our National Summer Learning Award winners, about what they are doing to keep the camp feel in their summer programs.
Thank you, Leslie. Hello, everybody. So we are a nonprofit in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm so glad my colleague Tiffany ended with fun, because that's what we are all about. So like my colleagues here from Young Audiences Maryland and Bishop Arts Theater, the arts are at the core of what we do. But I'm going to move in a different direction and share a little bit more about operations and the language we use, because these kids have been online doing digital learning for a while. We all know that. And so what can we do in the virtual space to create a camp atmosphere that gets kids excited to wake up every day and join your program? oops, hold on, I'm doing my own slides here, so I have to, okay. So here's our story. It started with our brand. The bottom image is our normal camp logo, Summer STEAM Institute, and the top is our new camp branding. Once we learned that we were not going to have a school, we decided that we needed to brand differently so parents would know there's a different expectation, but they have the same fun atmosphere. So how we did that was we kept our mission in the statement. Our mission is to spark creativity and curiosity in all learners through innovative learning experiences. So while we were considering a camp in a box idea, we decided to call them Create Kits. And the spark stays in there because we love that word. So our next big internal conversation was, what is going to be the foundation? How are we going to present arts programs virtually? We serve kindergarteners through 8th graders. So that's a very wide range of ages. So what we decided was we would focus on grade bands. So we have a K through 2nd grade kit, a 3rd through 5th grade kit, and a 6th through 8th grade kit. And all of them, while focused on the same weekly theme, will be different in their implementation. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. Howard Gardner, for those of you who know, he's been around since the early 80s. Teachers still use his research today because it's quite relevant. I look at these 8 modalities of learners, and this is how all kids learn. This is what every kid responds to in some way. We all learn differently and we all respond differently. And if we could just focus this summer on making sure that we tapped into all of these intelligences in some way throughout the week, we know we will captivate our students. And we know that our arts integrative programming, while virtual, can still maintain the integrity that we set out to do. So next we looked at previous successes, and for us the morning and afternoon rituals during carpool were very significant. Every morning and afternoon we made sure the kids came with something they were not expecting. They would get out of the car to the Mario Brothers or Disney princesses or local sports teams who showed up to open car doors. We always wanted kids to feel excited to get in the car, to show up, and like to refer to it as, think about the sports, well, the way we used to do sports, where the team would come out of the tunnel for the big game, and there would be cheerleaders and a band and dry ice and energy and pom-poms. That kind of adrenaline before a big game is similar to how we want kids to feel when they come to our camp. And so how do we do that virtually? We really need to think about what's going to get them excited and get their adrenaline going every day. So our mascot, this is Art Powers. You'll notice his head is the power on button because our tagline is power on your imagination. So Art's going to play a big role in our camp in keeping the adrenaline going. He's going to have ongoing conversations with our campers in many ways, from letter writing that will come in the mailbox to camp where they can give suggestions for camp to us. So an ongoing dialogue with our mascot is one of our ideas. Another idea is surprising campers throughout the day. We've done this in the past, and it's very easy to pop into a classroom or show up outside of a window, high-five the kids when they get out of the car, but not so easy to do virtually. So what we're looking at is how can we engage with our families and bring our community into the picture and surprise them when they're at home. And we're looking at virtual or drive-bys in parades where we would have a scheduled community group. So for example, here in Charleston, we have an antique car club. So we're engaging with them on a particular day to get their cars ranging from the 1930s to the 1950s. And they're going to be part of a parade where we'll have signs and surprise the campers in their house. And Art is actually going to ride in the rumble seat of a 1931 Ford, and he'll be waving to campers as he drives by their houses. So I would just encourage everyone to think about your community groups. And there are a lot of people who have been cooped up and may have clubs or organizations that are willing to get together and hop in a car and do a parade of some sort to keep it exciting. One of our local sports teams is a baseball team called the Charleston River Dogs. And Charlie, the River Dog, came last year and showed up for carpool, and that was really exciting. So we're going to keep that alive this year, and Charlie will come and join some of our parades and be our, quote, partner in fun. Because fun is at the heart of our summer work, and it's what's going to keep kids engaged and interested in what the programming is that you're presenting to them. While virtual fun is challenging, it is certainly not impossible. We are planning to include fun in each of our kits, so they'll have the learning components that are tied to videos that we're providing, but there will also be the fun, engaging pieces like bubbles and chalk and things they can go out and have a type of recess. Any camper that has a birthday, we're planning to deliver a cupcake on their doorstep with a note, and delivering kits kamikaze style, we call it, where by Monday morning, the kits will be at a child's house, but maybe hanging from a tree or out on their swing set. We're a very small organization, so we can shift and pivot like this. Larger organizations obviously would struggle if you're delivering 18,000 kits, but if you're able to drive to neighborhoods and have it set up with parents ahead of time, it would really be an exciting opportunity to keep the adrenaline going before the programming starts. In addition to kind of the bubble mentality, we're looking at partnering with another nonprofit that has a gutted bus. And we are looking at pop-up camps where we would drive to targeted neighborhoods at specific times, similar to a food truck, but we would be scheduled and they would know we were coming. And whatever art activity for the week is part of their curriculum, we would make sure that was somehow implemented from the bus. So the students could stand in their yards and we would do an activity in the street. We don't have those details ironed out yet, but we're still looking into that. Every detail is important to us, and we look at what's in the kit. It might not be just what is necessary for the activities, but also what is necessary for a child to feel like he or she is part of the learning. For example, when a child is wearing safety goggles and a lab coat, they're a scientist. So we keep this in mind when we create our programs, that the materials are included, but also the role playing or anything that might go with it that changes the atmosphere from a kitchen table to a science lab. For middle school students, we're partnering with local STEM organizations to provide content. So the one-on-one conversations will be with local organizations. For example, here we have Fox Music, which is a really big music store that also provides programming, and the kids will take apart synthesizers and engage in musical experiences with a goal to meet in small groups in a community space where they can share their learning. So that's about 3 to 4 weeks out, and we don't have that ironed out yet, but we are hoping to have those middle schoolers engaged so they can share their work and talk about what they're doing with the STEM professionals. Language is a really important detail that we didn't want to overlook, because each of our camp weeks has a specific STEM theme, and we roll that out with interactive arts experiences. So right now, our artists are also creating videos that will take between 2 to 3 hours each day for the students to work on. So camp counselors will guide that work and provide all other theme-related structure. So for example, the Pirate Week, we might call the daily curriculum treasure mapping, and lunch invitations would invite campers to the galley, because we are really trying to create relationships with each of our counselors engaging with the students who come to camp. Feeling connected is going to be our challenge this summer. So we've changed the semantics of some of our groupings too. So campers are going to be assigned to a creative cabin, and they'll be with a camp counselor who's an education major at one of our local colleges. We put a lot of effort into training these counselors to be energetic and engaging every day, kind of like Disney World. That parade happens every day, and those people are in that parade as if it's the first time they've ever done it. Well, our staff has to be that way too. Every day needs to be the first day and just as exciting. So during their live virtual meetings, they're going to have to explain the art and STEM projects and create cabin cheers and host optional lunch bunch gatherings and afternoon check-ins. Because parents, like in other organizations that have done focus groups, they've told us that their children are responding favorably when personal adult checkpoints are holding the kids accountable. And it needs to be naturally embedded in our camp as well. So something just as simple as, hey guys, at 3 o'clock today, let's all hop on. I'd like to see how you're doing with that one dance video you were doing, and if you have any questions about force and motion. Our counselors are always willing to go above and beyond to keep the energy up. So in addition to dressing up, they will write handwritten personal letters to each camper in their creative cabin the week before camp starts, and then 2 to 3 times during the camp week, and then 1 after camp is over. And that's just our way of being able to keep those relationships and to keep our camp engaging. Since we couldn't be with them, we wanted to have that opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with them. And in addition to counselors going above and beyond, we also want to deliver the kits in a really interesting way. We know that Amazon would be a great way to get those kits out to everybody because each week is a different theme. But we're doing it a little differently, and we're putting kits together and then having a kind of what we call kamikaze delivery. And what that is looking at taking these kits out before they wake up in the morning on Monday, and the kits are hanging from the trees or outside their window, or some kind of interesting way that, again, the kids want to run outside and have that adrenaline rush, kind of like Christmas morning, what's waiting for me? And in conclusion, we know we have an incredible opportunity this summer to get kids excited to get back in front of a computer. With the online virtual camp experience coupled with 4 self-paced hands-on activities led by our amazing artists, we feel we can successfully maintain an arts camp full of engagement and connectivity while being apart. But we're still planning, just like you. We're still unknown and things change daily, but for the most part, we know that our job is to get them excited and eager to be with us, and then the programming, as great as it is, will be very successful. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. So we are going to have some time now for some questions, and we have a lot of great questions in here, so I'm trying to see if as many we can get to as possible. Stacy and Curtis, can you explain a little bit more about the structure of your program? So, for example, how the TV show fits in with the learning?
Curtis, take that away.
Okay, if I'm breaking up, you just chime in and you take it from me. But essentially, the TV show is the essentially the modeling part of the arts integrated lesson that we would that is being broadcast. So they're 30 minutes. They are students for our program. They're coming for a synchronous crew with their crew leader. And then immediately after that, they are to watch the lesson, whether that's on the TV or whether it's on online. But that is the lesson they watch on their own. We have to think about a lot of our families. We have a lot of families with multiple kids. So when we think about maybe they only have one device, that's kind of why we're looking at staggering. But essentially, they would have a certain period of time to watch the video, and then when their next synchronous session, they're actually getting targeted instruction from either the teacher or the artist, depending on which block they're in, kind of building off of the lesson that they just watched on the kids show, and kind of building out extensions, doing kind of independent practice, guided practice with their small groups.
Great, thank you. And Tiffany, can you share a little bit more about what offerings you're going to be having this summer?
So yes, so this summer we are offering music. With music, we're offering guitar lessons. And for visual art, we're doing eco arts as well as cooking. And then for theater, we have our basic theater class. And then the other class is for, as I said, music, dance, visual arts, and dance. So yes, and dance is, we're focusing on more of the SEL movement, mindfulness, and meditation for this summer.
Great, thank you. So this is for anybody, question for anybody. Can you talk a little bit more about engaging kids at different ages? So I know a lot of you are working with elementary school students or middle school students. Maybe a little bit more about ideas on how to engage with the older students, like high school age. And that's for anybody who wants to answer.
Well, I think for the older kids, it's great to make sure that you have or give them things that they can do, such as creating their own videos or blogging, something that's very engaging where they're able to create projects and they're able to submit those projects. So I think those are some of the key things that you can do to implement in your workshops for some of the older students.
So we have a couple of technical questions, quick technical questions. I'll let anybody who wants to weigh in on these. Are there any special methods for uploading or sending, editing large video files? Any advice on that? It was directed at you, Tiffany, but anybody wants to answer that?
Okay, so what I've shared with my artists, the best way to submit videos is through WeTransfer, as well as using Google Drive to upload your videos. And make sure that you send them in either an MP4 format or an MOV. Those are the type of videos that we've had the most success with in terms of submitting them.
Right. Is anybody familiar with the rules for music copyright online? Or anybody run into that issue?
I have. I've ran into that where we've had an artist submit a video and they used music that is produced or published by someone else, and for YouTube they will delete your video. So they wouldn't even allow us to upload it. So it's very important to use original material. It doesn't work the same for maybe visual arts. You can use some of the visual clips like Disney and things like that. We've used that and there hasn't been an issue, but for music, it definitely is.
And then what platforms are you all using for your virtual programs? And we'll start with Tiffany. What are you using for your?
So yes, we're using Zoom and we're pivoting to Google Classroom as well, where we're able to use both of those platforms.
Curtis?
Yeah, we actually are planning on using the exact same two. In Baltimore City, most of our teachers and most of our artists are from Baltimore City. They're using Google Classroom. So we've decided that as opposed to trying to teach them something new, we will keep going with that because it seems to be working from what we've heard. And then they are not using Zoom, but there are lots of issues with the platform that they have been using, which is Blackboard Collaborate. It's also very expensive. So we're planning on using that primary combination there as well.
And Robin, what are you all using?
Right now we use WebEx, but we have not determined what our schools have been using. So we want to, like Curtis, have that continuity, but we don't have experience with any of the other ones.
That's a good tip to check in with your school districts to see what they're using, what the kids might be familiar with. So I have a question around how you all are doing limited distance programming, how you're managing challenges in a creative fashion. So how are you managing things like equipments, meals, limited number of groups? So Robin, you described a little bit about that, but maybe if you, Tiffany or Chris, if you could talk a little bit about how you're going to manage those things, getting kids equipments, material, things like that.
Yeah, happy to start. I mentioned the arts and learning snack kits. We've been delivering those, as Stacy mentioned, we've been delivering those at our meal sites here in Baltimore City for a few weeks now already, and are planning on doing that through the end of the school year. So we kind of are planning on continuing to use that infrastructure to basically use the kits to give supplies that coincide with, for instance, the arts and learning kids lessons that'll be broadcast. So we're using meal site pickup because we've kind of already worked that out. We've thought through and have definitely some information to share if people are interested in terms of kind of the safety protocol. How do you package this many goods? We're doing about 9,000 packs a week. You know, got to let it sit for a certain number of days after it's last been touched. There's all of those things to think through. But so trying to kind of keep it manageable at the meal sites, and both our kids and essentially potentially other kids in the district that maybe even aren't in the program might be able to benefit from that.
And that link you shared goes to a list of the materials that's in the kits that people can view?
No, I don't believe that the actual kits themselves, the individual list is in there, Stacy. I don't know if you have something that is easily shareable with that.
I'm happy to, sorry, I'm happy to share. Each kit is different, and it's created with the artist that conceives of the idea. And actually, Matt Barinholtz is part of the webinar, and I think in the chat he might be able to share some more information about that.
Okay. So I want to make sure I'm paying attention to the time. I think what I might want to do right now, if everybody can stay on for a few extra minutes, whoever's able to stay for a couple extra minutes to answer some more questions, we'll do that. I am going to do the wrap up things right now, and then maybe you can answer, get two or three more questions in here. So for those of you who need to leave, I just want to make sure I share these announcements. Look out for more in our Voices of Summer webinar series. We're going to be having some other webinars coming up on social emotional learning, on virtual learning, on college access, a lot of things coming up in our schedule. We're also going to be celebrating National Summer Learning Week this year, July 6th to the 11th. So look out for more announcements about that. On ways you can celebrate summer, and there's new resources and things that we'll have as well. And we're still planning for our national conference to be in November in DC, November 16th to the 18th. So there's more information about that on our website. And if you're not following us on social media right now, please be sure to do that to get the latest announcements and updates through there. That's where we post the most stuff. But going back to our questions, just in case anybody needs to leave us at 3 o'clock, do you guys have any thoughts or ideas about collaborative projects kids can do virtually or socially distanced? So ways kids can work together. I think, Robin, you mentioned a little bit about this, but what are some of the ideas you have for how kids can interact with each other this summer?
Yeah, so we're looking at some spaces outside that they could get together. We looked originally at like a Monday launch and a Friday culminating activity at a school where we could stagger the hours and have hula hoops spaced out, and the kid goes straight to their hula hoop, and there was a share. And our school district just wasn't ready for that right now. So we're looking about 3 weeks out, maybe having an opportunity for middle school students who are doing more project-based activities to meet at a municipal site. Our cities are opening and a little more welcoming than our school districts right now. So could there be a park or a location or a community center nearby where we would partner with the city, and then these community groups that are teaching the middle school would be the ones that would ask for certain check-in points, and maybe the kids could share, or, you know, we don't have it developed yet because we don't have that in place, but I'm visioning a place where they could share their part of the work and it would go together in a space. So if they were building something, they each built a part of it, came together and kind of pieced it. So I think there are opportunities for that definitely in the middle school. In the earlier grades, we're just not sure yet because that still requires the parents to get them there and drive them there, and we're not sure how that would work.
We have a question about families registering for your programs. Is it like a first come, first serve? So maybe this is, let me frame the questions this way. How are you registering and recruiting kids this summer? And then just for people on here, I know they might not be in the same place as you, but are there ways for them to maybe connect with your program, or are you kind of limiting it to kids that are near you? And we can start with young audiences.
So one thing that Curtis and I were just talking about this morning is probably for many of you, you already started registration, right? Like families have already been like, when can I register? And this was in a time when we assumed that by summer we would be together, even if in a modified format. So, you know, like Tiffany, who's been asking parents questions, you know, Curtis and his team did a really good job of reaching out to families and saying, hey, we know you know, more than 1,000 of you have registered. Like, would you still do this program if it was virtual? And so we have a good sense that many of the families who were already counting on us for an in-person program are going to transition to a virtual program. And so we sort of have this, but we have a challenge where we're going to have to, in, you know, less than 8 weeks, market a virtual program and enroll, you know, enroll and then build all this content. So we're really, we're having to sort of change course quickly. Anything you want to add to that, Curtis? Nope.
So are people outside of your where you're located? So young audiences in Baltimore, Tiffany is in Dallas, and Robin is down in South Carolina, right? Yes. Are people kids from other locations able to join you for this summer? Or are you just in looking at the kids in your own area?
We're looking in Maryland because our partnership is, we're deep in with, you know, Baltimore City schools, and the funding is really coming from Title I. This program will be limited to Baltimore City public schools. Our mission is Maryland, so we are looking at, is there content that we're creating that could be repurposed, repackaged, and could benefit other kids? And so we are looking at the ability to basically scale some of this to have an even larger impact. And I think for all of us, if we're developing, you know, this content, there's challenges, but there's definitely new opportunities to be able to impact kids, probably more kids. So we're trying to look at that. I'd be curious what, you know, if other folks are thinking along that angle too.
Well, for Bishop Arts Theater Center, we are focusing on those students who have already registered, because yes, like you all, we actually register students early in the year for the summer. Now, I will say that we have on-demand programs or workshops through our YouTube channel, so that's accessible to everyone.
So we have just a couple other quick questions. I think there's some questions just about the packing and the kits and the logistics of that. So we'll share some contact information. Maybe people can contact you directly about like the cost of kits and how that's going together. And a quick question about posting kids' videos? Are you doing it on a YouTube channel? Are there kind of any consent questions around that? Anything like that?
Just two thoughts on that. Because we have been running the same program, we for a couple years, we've been using a closed Facebook group that's just open to our families. Once they get enrolled, they are allowed to join that for the year. And we're planning on using that as kind of more, a little bit more closed off way to share, but to try to be in the moment and be able to share with families what their kids are doing, having our staff doing a lot of that posting and encouraging kids, of course, to post themselves. But we generally have, because of our program being a district-wide program, we have generally releases to allow us to show most anything. Most kids face it, it's essentially an opt-out release. And so we can go and do that, but our goal is to ask for additional permission before we're doing any wider sharing than just within the family of parents and students that are involved.
So we have a question about using Google Classroom. It says, we would love to use Google Classroom for our virtual summer program, but we were told by Google, since we are nonprofit education and not considered an education group, that we cannot use Google Classroom for free. Has anyone else had this issue or found a way around it? So I know Tiffany and Curtis, you mentioned that you're using it, but I don't know if you're paying for it or.
Well, we are actually, so with Google Classroom, in order to use it, you have to have a G Suite, and you can get that access through either a school district, or you would have to apply, and that is a fee to apply for G Suite through Google, because you're going to get information from parents and students with their email addresses and things like that in order for them to participate. So in order for the students to participate, you have to have a G Suite. So once you apply for that, because that's also available for nonprofits as well. So once you apply for that, then you are able to use Google Classrooms, because you have to have that access through G Suite first in order to use it. And you can use Google Classrooms for free. And also through Google Classrooms, you're able to live stream that using your calendar. You use your calendar and you're able to go and utilize Google Meet or Google Hangout and schedule your live workshops through Google Classroom.
Okay. I'll ask this question for our panel, and then anybody actually who's still an attendee, if you have any ideas for free or paid websites that would provide useful, that would prove to be useful for creative team breakout sessions or discussion ideas. So if anybody in the audience has any ideas, feel free to put those in the chat as well, so we can share those. I will also mention one of the things that we're having coming up in our webinar series, so we're going to do kind of a vendor fair, resource fair kind of thing, to have just a quick webinar where we have a bunch of vendors come on and to show, just to share a little bit about their resources and things like that. So look out for that coming out as well as one that we're going to be doing with Apple. They're going to be demonstrating some of their applications that they have. And then two last quick questions. What time of day have you guys found is best for interacting with participants? And then how many students are you planning to enroll this summer? Are you guys kind of keeping to your regular schedule for the summer? No, you should. Young Artists, you shared yours.
Well, yes, for Bishop Arts, we're sticking with our number of students that we serve. And so if we own our own space, so if we were actually at our facility, we would have 50 students, because of our spacing, we can only recruit 50 students. And so we have those students pre-registered. And so we will be working with those group of students for the summer. And then, like I said, our on-demand videos or asynchronous videos are available on our YouTube channel. So anyone is able to access those workshops.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? Either Robin, Curtis, Stacy? And that's that.
I'll jump in real quick. So what we've learned is 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Those are kind of our bookend times. And then we're serving about 195 students are signed up right now. Those are in rural camps and also our camp that parents registered for. And I just want to add, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this in my section, but look out at Title I schools too. There's a lot of funding for this and those kids really need some support. So if there's a way for you to tap into those school districts that could really use your great programs and your positive energy this summer, I would tap into them and ask how you can help, specifically to those spring standards that have been taught at home that may need a little extra oomph this summer. So that's my last bit of advice to everybody.
Yes, definitely. You don't see me nodding, but definitely there's money that came through for the stimulus bills that is going to states and to state and local education agencies. So definitely connect with them. They should have money that is summer programs are allowable use of those funds. It's definitely correct there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panel again for joining us. Thank you for everybody for staying on a couple extra minutes. Hopefully you found it informative. As I said, we'll send out a follow-up email with the link to this recording, the slides, and some of these other resources that were mentioned. All right, everyone, thanks. Have a good day. Bye.